Welcome to Houston House at South by Southwest. I'm Natalie Harms, editor of Innovation Map. As the energy capital of the world, Houston has been the hub for energy innovation for over a century. Today, the largest energy companies in the world are connecting with innovative startups to help commercialize new technologies. That includes Shell, which launched Shell Ventures in 1996, one of the first corporate venture funds in the oil and gas industry. I caught up with investment director Kirk Coburn to learn about Shell Ventures' latest investment alongside LO3 Energy CEO Bill Collins. Kirk, Bill, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So, Kirk, we'll start with you. Tell me about your background and what led you to your role at Shell Ventures.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and in 2010, I decided to start an accelerator focused exclusively on energy in Houston and invested in over 60 energy companies from all over the world with the idea of focusing on companies that were going to solve the world's energy problems. And through that, through those investments and running the accelerator and venture funds, I met Shell and I got to work with the Shell Ventures team and really thought that they were a great team. And I thought Shell was an exciting company to be with because they have a big vision for the future of energy. And so after in 2015, they called me and said, "Hey, we'd love someone to come and get involved in Houston, run the Houston team." So I said, I was more than happy to say yes, which has been I've been here almost 4 years.
People who might not be familiar, what does Shell Ventures do?
Right. So we are the venture capital arm of Royal Dutch Shell. So we make minority investments into exciting energy companies from all over the world that are solving energy problems, especially those that are focused on the energy transition. And we'll write checks anywhere from 2 to 20 million, and we'll take board seats, and we like to be actively involved in those investments.
Mm-hmm. Which brings in Bill. So Bill, tell me about your company and then how you first got involved with Shell Ventures.
Sure, yeah, of course. So I work at LO3. I'm one of the two co-founders of LO3 Energy. My background is in investment banking. I spent a number of years in that area in markets and got intrigued by the carbon markets around the turn of the century. I spent a decade in the international carbon markets. And that was a time where I saw many of the possibilities that marrying transparent price signals and good market design, what that could provide to, the moving the needle in terms of climate, in terms of energy. And so around 2010, I met my co-founder Lawrence, and we decided, after a period of time, that in fact the energy space was the place that we wanted to focus, and we wanted to apply those same principles there. So transparency, price as an indicator of control, an indicator of investment, so that basically deploying marketplaces in order to speed the energy transition. So that aligns us very closely with Shell. We met the folks at Shell about 2 years ago in 2019. Kirk and the rest of the team at Shell Ventures made it very clear to us that what LO3 was trying to do, working very hard to do, was 100% aligned with what they were trying to support through their venture investments. So it's been a great collaboration since then.
Tell me about LO3 and the problems that your technology is solving in the industry.
Great. Yeah, LO3 is a software company. We have a software platform that we sell as a service. Our customers are utilities and retailers around the world, electricity utilities and retailers around the world. And what our platform allows them to do is design new programs, new tariff structures that they can then deploy into subsets of their customer base. So the same principles that are applied in other large markets can be applied with design and specificity into their customer bases. So we allow them to innovate and do it in such a way that it is regulatory compliant, and also that it is able to integrate in their legacy systems. So we allow them to move faster and engage more in terms of an offensive style in the energy transition.
And just to add, Bill, I think one of the interesting things about LO3 is they enable prosumers, those customers that are actually producing their own energy. So whether that's through solar or even if they have storage, they can interact and sort of sell that excess power or allow others to, borrow that power, if you will, use that power. And so they allow the utility and those retailers to create these energy markets. Because as we saw, last couple of weeks in Texas, especially, is that people needed energy, other people had energy, and there was no way to sort of share that energy on the same grid. And LO3 enables that capability, which is very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, Kirk. Yeah. Ultimately, the vision of LO3, as many other people in the markets, is, a much more distributed, resilient grid. So some of the impacts that we saw in Texas will be mitigated, less likely to occur. And that's what we're all working for, as well as a decarbonized energy stack.
One thing I know entrepreneurs realize is there's all different ways to access capital. There's venture capital, there's angel investing, there's bootstrapping, of course. But what specifically does corporate venture provide? How is it different from what else is out there?
Well, good question. I think that there's, probably pros and cons. But primarily our value, sort of where our unique spot is that we provide also a customer point of view. So, Shell is actively in the power and mobility space, and that is a big ambition for us. So I think for LO3 and for other entrepreneurs is we provide not only a source of capital, and we're long-term capital investors. So it's not that we're trying to generate a quick exit. But secondly, we also can be a potential customer. And so we look at that from both how do we make money on this investment, but also how do we become a customer of the solution? And so LO3, for example, just fits really nicely into our ambitions, into our renewables and energy solutions business, which is sort of the future of where Shell's trying to go.
And Bill, I'm sure you have a perspective on this. What sort of kind of doors are opened by working with Shell Ventures?
It's great. I mean, having Shell as an investor and frankly, a partner has been incredibly valuable to LO3. I know Kirk feels the same, but this transition needs to happen relatively quickly and needs to happen at scale in order to really impact the trajectory of things from a climate perspective. And so for us, for LO3, we need partners with whom we can scale. So you'll see that we have partners that are quite significant companies, investors, and business partners, and so that's our ultimate aim is to deploy our technology at scale and make an impact. And a partner like Shell, who shares the same vision, is interested in the same thing happening, is perfect for us. So we couldn't be happier.
Bill, tell me a little bit about your involvement in the Houston innovation ecosystem. I know Houston's the energy capital of the world. So how are you tapping into resources here and working with other companies based here?
So one of our first connections to Houston was with a company called Direct Energy that used to be part of the Centrica group. And Centrica is a shareholder of LO3 and one of the early backers of LO3. We worked with Centrica to design a configuration of our platform for their C&I customers. And so that was kind of our first dipping the toe in the water of the Houston market. And now our focus is almost entirely on working with Shell. Shell is obviously a big participant in the Houston capital and business environment, and we're going to work with them to help them deploy our solution to their customers, many of whom are in Texas and the Houston environment. Some of the Shell group companies and some other technologies in Houston represent great partnerships for us, potential partnerships for us. And we've had some early stage conversations with those. And then I would say ultimately, Houston as a business community, if you look at the companies there, they have a tremendous amount of experience in the built environment. How do you do large projects, harnessing capital, working through regulations, and building things at significant scale? So if I think of any environment out there, for us, given that our objective is ultimately scaling and making an impact, Houston is perfect. So, we're excited. We're early on in our trajectory overall, as well as our relationship with the Houston business community, but it's a good start.
And Kirk, I want to bring you in to talk about Houston. Of course, since you've been involved in Houston innovation for a while, what is the role of entrepreneurs and innovators in Houston working to maintain Houston's energy capital of the world status?
Great question. I mean, I've invested a lot of my own money and time in Houston as an entrepreneur and as an investor. I can tell you, entrepreneurs are critical for building startup ecosystems because they hire people, so they employ people, and then when there's an exit, they recycle capital back into that ecosystem. Houston has a lot of entrepreneurs, if you will, those entrepreneurs that have started or created very large companies quickly. And I think, which has been great. I think that's been one of Houston's sort of gems, if you will, is the ability to generate and build these large energy companies quickly. We also need the entrepreneurs that are starting, like what LO3 is doing, software companies that go public or have big exits. And those entrepreneurs will turn around and recycle that capital by investing in other entrepreneurs. And it really is, I think the entrepreneurs are critical. Successful entrepreneurs are critical for reinvesting in the community, and we're trying to nurture that base now.
That's the true testament of an established innovation ecosystem, is when you have that cycle happening, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So talking more about the Houston innovation ecosystem, what sort of resources and advantages does the city of Houston provide for startups that you're working with at Shell, Kirk? And then after Bill, maybe you can talk about that too.
Well, I think number one is, Houston is a large ecosystem of energy expertise. So, what's great for Houston, especially not only in traditional energy, but even in energy transition, you have a huge installed customer base. So number one is entrepreneurs all want revenue, and revenue is generated through customers. And that's, in some ways seen as non-dilutive equity. I mean, revenue is better than in raising capital if you can get it. However, revenue is lagging, so usually go raise capital first. However, revenue is how companies build their valuation. So you have a built-in customer base that's second to none in the world in energy. Secondly, you have an installed base of expertise. As Bill said, we know how to scale large projects. We understand energy very well. We understand not only capital, but project finance. We understand how to scale and build things. And so companies have not only customer base, but also a place to hire great talent, people that really know what they're doing. And we've seen that happen over and over again. So those are probably two of the most important aspects of building a business. And then third, Houston's just a very friendly and easy to do business city. It's, relatively low cost of living, and friendly people. It's one of the most diverse cities in the world. And that diversity is really circled around business diversity. And that diversity has been actually a really easy place to do business. And I find it to be really second to none anywhere else.
Yeah. Bill, what about you from your perspective? What has been the environment for you coming in to Houston?
Sure. Our filter as a startup is very different than Kirk's and Shell's. But I would echo some of the statements that he made, which is that Houston, is a very welcoming business community. We have all of our conversations there, have been, they haven't all been fruitful, but they've all been, positive and proactive. I think people like to get things done. And that very much fits with the mode that we're in at the moment. I would say that Houston, as one of the largest and fastest growing communities in the urban communities in the U.S., represents a great, in a way, a test bed, and certainly the regulatory environment in Texas and the business environment in the Houston area is conducive to that. So we look at that as an opportunity to deploy our solutions, and obviously other technology companies feel the same way. And so there are a lot of the things that underpin our potential success that exist in spades in Houston. So it's a great place for us to be doing business, and with, again, folks like Shell, it's a great place to find that support.
Mm-hmm. And Kirk, on the other side of the coin, where are some areas within energy innovation, energy tech, that there still needs to be some improvement from either the entrepreneur side of things or Shell Venture side of things too?
No, great. Yes, absolutely. I think a few things. One is, Houston has such a deep history of energy, mm-hmm. from traditional energy, that I think that overhangs just the massive size of, oil and gas, for example, overhangs how fast and how important the energy transition is. And so while the energy transition is probably the fastest growing sector of energy overall, it's still small compared to oil and gas. And I think since Houston has such a big oil and gas business, that size and scale overhangs new energy. So a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand that Houston is such a great place to build an energy company. And a new energy company, ask John Berger at Sonova, who went public recently. It's a lower cost of capital. He's been able to raise money in Houston. He's been able to hire expertise for a much lower cost than any of his competitors. It's such a good place, but I think one of the issues is just the overhang, and it's almost noise. I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And secondly, now that, we have some, entrepreneurs that have had a few exits in the space, we need to see them redeploy that capital in other entrepreneurs here. So I think it's coming, but I think, we can't sit around and wait. Maybe a third one that's really not a Houston challenge, but it's the Texas challenge is, ERCOT used to be one of the leaders in sort of energy transformation, and I think ERCOT's fallen behind other regulatory wise behind others around the U.S., and I think that's something that needs to change.
Yeah, of course, and you bring up ERCOT, and we talked before about the winter storm, and I think, what sort of conversations have started with what happened in Texas in February, and where are those conversations going now that we did have this occur, and it's time to kind of self-reflect and realize what we're doing? And then what's the role of technology in that, Kirk?
Well, I'm not sure what's happening at the Public Utility Commission or inside of ERCOT. I can tell you that inside of sort of in the trading space, it was such a wild time, and also in the consumer space, all of us that lived through it. I think the future of energy is, people want, affordable energy. They want reliable energy. They want abundant energy, but they also now want clean energy. And now my fifth one, and this is a plug for LO3, but they want local energy, because energy produced locally is the most efficient, the cheapest, and the most sustainable. And I think software can play a role in enabling the ability to be able to have local energy and share that energy locally. as well as provide sustainable or renewable energy as well. So I think software plays and technology plays a huge role in enabling that. But it's not just software. It's not just business. You also need sort of regulation. You need the regulatory bodies to allow sort of tariff structures, allow someone like myself that has a generator or has backup power to be able to share that power with my neighbors. There's no incentive or ability to do that today. And that's not only, we don't have the technology, we also don't have the sort of the regulatory ability to do that. But I think those are items that are important. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the dust is still settling. Frankly,
or the ice. The ice is still melting.
Right, the dust is settling, and so I think the implications of what we saw over the past several weeks and the unfortunate impact it had on a huge number of people, in terms of their comfort and safety at the time, and in terms of the economics post that. I think that's going to be dissected for quite a while. But I agree 100% with you, Kirk, in the sense that after that dust does settle and after that reflection has occurred, if we don't take the easy out, which is pointing to convenient scapegoats, if that that analysis really does occur, I think it points to those factors that you mentioned, which is local energy capable of being shared across the built network is the most resilient. We need more of that, not less. And so processes and regulations and markets that support that are, ought to be increasingly important to a place like Texas. And that, I feel like it's built into that, the ethos, within Texas business is a leader, not a lagger. So, I've got high hopes, but we'll see how it all pans out.
So, Bill, for kind of growing in Houston, what are your plans? I'm sure factoring in what happened in February, it affected some of your plans for your presence in Houston, just considering the demand. But what's your plan for expanding in Houston, growing in Houston, working more in the Houston area?
Yeah, no, we're very excited, and I keep sort of coming back to the Shell relationship, but that is our most important corporate relationship at the moment, and they are a great partner for us to expand. Obviously, not just but certainly in Houston. So we have ongoing conversations with a number of the business groups located in Houston about how we might actually help them achieve some of their corporate objectives. And then there's the ecosystem. Again, some of the other technology providers. Our platform is fundamentally designed not just for us to build upon it, but for other technology providers to build upon it as well or connect into it. We're not going to build all of the functionality that's necessary to run this grid of the future. We're only going to build a small portion of it and a supporting portion of it. And so for us, getting to that expertise, getting to the entrepreneurs that are doing innovative things in the Houston market is critical. So again, early stage, but we expect to continue to expand what we're doing there.
And Kirk, what about for you? What about Shell Ventures and the presence in Houston that y'all already have, of course, and what does the future look like for Shell Ventures?
I mean, I'd like to have a bigger, presence in Houston. Ultimately, I think one of the things I've been a sort of a big advocate internally at Shell on a global basis is Houston is such a great place for the energy transition. We need to put more people here focused on the energy transition versus just the other business units we have here. But expanding renewables and energy solutions team in Houston would be great because all the expertise here and the other advantages we talked about earlier. So we're we consider ourselves one of the leaders in Houston ecosystem, and we'd like to continue to be that.
Kirk, Bill, thank you so much for joining me today and discussing everything that we've discussed within energy and Houston.
Thank you, Natalie. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, Natalie. Really enjoyed that. Appreciate it.